Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Adyeshta chetaya imam dharmam sambhadamavayo. Yana yagena tenaham istishamiti me mati. Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita that those who study this sacred conversation between he and his devotee Arjuna worship the Supreme Lord with their intelligence. So this evening we shall read from the 14th verse of the 15th chapter. This chapter is called the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottama Yoga. Vaishvanara, my plenary portion as the digesting fire. Bhutva, becoming. Praninam, of all living entities. Deham, in the bodies. Ashrita, situated. Prana, the outgoing air. Apana, the downgoing air. Samayukta, keeping in balance. Pachami, I digest. Anam, foodstuff. Chatuvidam, the four kinds. Translation: I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff. Purport: according to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand there is a fire in the stomach which digests all the food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 5.9.1, also confirm that the Supreme Lord or Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. Oyam Agnir Vaishvanaro Yo Yam Anta Purushe Yanedam Anam Pachate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuffs, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Shabdadibhyo anta pratishthanachcha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of foodstuff. Some are swallowed, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is the digestive force for all of them. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashrita Pranapana Samayukta Pachami Anam Chaturvidam. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff. Ukam karoti bachalam pangam langayate girim yat kripatadaham bande Sri Gurun Dinatarinam. So it may seem astonishing to find out that we have a fire blazing in our stomach. So this, of course, is Ayurvedic explanation of the process of digestion. Certainly, it does not actually contradict the modern explanation. The modern explanation says that there is hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So you have your choice, either acid or fire. In any case, the food is being digested. So the process is, of course, the explanation of fire means that, as explained here, there is actually a superior power who is addressed as Vaishvanara, force, which the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra identify with, everyone's leaving. Identify with Brahman, the Supreme Lord. So this and many other such examples are given throughout the Shastras. Bhagavad Gita gives so many. Krishna is explaining his Vibhuti Tattva, the way his powers are spread throughout the creation. He's explaining this in several chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So this is to show, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, that we are not independent, even in the most simple basic things which we take for granted. And this is a very nice example, digestion of food. Because thoughtlessly we eat, you see, 2, 3, some people eat 5, 6 times a day. Just stuffing things in their mouth without thinking. And it's going down into the belly, and if our health is good, then it's being digested. And we're not conscious of this process. We may be thinking by some foolishness, some foolish philosophy, that I'm in control of my body. This is my body. I can do with it as I like. I am the Lord of this body. Or people just think they are the body. I am this body. So if that's your identity, then so many things are happening inside this body over which not only do you have no control, you don't even have any awareness of it. You cannot even explain in the most simple fashion how it's happening. And this is a good example, digestion of food. But we become very conscious of how we're dependent upon superior power for digestion when the digestion stops functioning, when we get ill, and then the food just goes into the belly and rots. Doesn't get digested, and we have stomach ache, and we have to take medicine, and we cannot eat, and we feel so miserable. And we're going here and there asking people, can you help me cure this problem? So this and yes, many other experiences we have in life, if we're intelligent, we can learn from them and see that actually I am fully dependent upon superior arrangement, even for all the basic functions of this body. Another very basic function is the heartbeat. So how are we controlling the heartbeat? You see, as it is said, we are just one heartbeat away from death. Means if our heart beats and then if it doesn't beat again, you're finished. So our life in this body depends upon this pump in the chest. And what is our control over it? We have absolutely no control over it. You see, most of the time we're not even thinking of it. Of course, if you have a heart attack, then then you think of it when you feel the pains in the chest. Then you think of it. So, where is this power coming from? That also is from a spiritual source. The whole energy of the body emanates from the heart. And that is because soul and supersoul are situated there. And the soul is described as floating on this prana, these different kinds of airs that are in the body. And these airs, prana vayu, they spread the consciousness everywhere. The blood carries the air, as you well know. Red blood means that there's oxygen in it. So this blood is carrying the air, and the air is carrying the consciousness, and in this way consciousness is pervading throughout the body. So now all of this, these kinds of explanations we find in Bhagavad Gita about Vaishvanara and the prana, and there are many other points in this chapter and other chapters which are specifically related to Vedanta. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the purport, he's citing Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, and of course Vedanta Sutra, because these are very big issues in Vedantic scholarship. Of course, it may mean very little to us, but from a Vedantic point of view, it is very significant, Krishna's explanation, because there are references throughout the philosophical sections of the Vedas, the Upanishads, and so on. There are references to Brahman being situated in Vaishvanara or in Prana. So now, philosophers, Vedic philosophers, they are engaged in trying to search out this Brahman. So they study the Shastra. Of course, they're practicing their own sadhana, their own spiritual discipline to gain realization, and they discuss with each other extensively, have arguments, Vedantic debates, to identify just what is this Brahman, just what is this supreme truth. And I was mentioning this morning about 4 Vaishnav Sampradayas. They were founded by great Vaishnav Vedantists who have written extensively on the problems of Vedanta, on the whole philosophical controversy. So Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka, Vishnu Swami, they're famous names in the field of Vedantic scholarship. And of course, these are the Vaishnavas. Then there are the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, headed by Shankaracharya, and in his line there are many, many other commentators. Also in the Vaishnava Sampradayas, these 4 Sampradayas, there are also many other commentators coming down after the great founders. And in our own Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is a branch of the Madhva, Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, also Baladev Vidyabhusan, he has written Vedanta commentary. So this is all very intense philosophy. Sometimes in some classes I try to present some of these issues, and I know other devotees who sometimes try to do this, but it's not very successful. It's a good way to cure insomnia. If you've had trouble sleeping, you've had difficulty, then hear some talk on Vedanta that will surely cure your sleeping problem. Because this field of scholarship, this field of philosophical research, it is not very applicable, especially not to those from Western background. We don't have any access to these issues, to these controversies. They mean nothing to us. You see, what is this Brahman in the stomach that is digesting the food? And then these different scholars, they research the scriptures and they try to produce evidence to explain their own theory. So, of course, among the Vaishnavas, although there's 4 schools, basically they all agree. They all agree on the basic tattva, the basic absolute truth, that it is Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So they agree. He is the supreme Brahman, and by his plenary expansion, he is there in the stomach digesting food. Now, Krishna, in this Bhagavad Gita, he's so nicely settling all these issues. He's just explaining it. He says, Aham Vaishvanara Bhutva. He says, I am that Vaishvanara. So Bhagavad Gita is actually, it's Krishna's own words. He's the supreme authority. All the great Vedantists, even Shankaracharya, the Mayavadi, even he in his famous work, Gita Dhyana, Meditations on Bhagavad Gita, he has also said that the Bhagavad Gita is the milk of the Upanishads. He's compared the Upanishads, these are the philosophical texts of the Vedas, which are very difficult to understand. He's compared them to a herd of cows, 108 cows. And Krishna, you know, he's Gopal, he's a cowherd boy. So he's written in his poem that Krishna milked these cows and filled a bucket of milk, you see. And this bucket of milk, that is the Bhagavad Gita. So if you simply drink this milk, these 700 verses, which one can read in about an hour's time, if one doesn't study the purport. So one can drink this milk and attain conclusive understanding of Vedanta. Now, as the devotees here know, Vedanta means the essence of the Veda. And the Vedas, this is a vast compendium and a spiritual encyclopedia of so many books. And people spend literally their whole lives just trying to understand this section of the Veda, that section of the Veda. Just like there are Brahmin families in India, you'll still see these names, Dvi-Vedi, or Tri-Vedi, or Chatur-Vedi. That means the Brahmins in this family, they're supposed to be masters of 2 Vedas, Dvi-Veda, or Tri-Veda, 3 Vedas, or 4 Vedas, you see. So they spend their whole lifetime just studying different sections of the Vedas. And still, they may not know the essential truth, the essential conclusion. But if one simply studies Bhagavad Gita, it's made very clear and plain that Supreme Brahman, Supreme Truth, is Krishna. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Krishna says, I am the basis of this Brahman, this absolute truth that all the philosophers are searching after. So, the Lord can be found in such, you see, such places as the belly, as the fire of digestion. He can actually be found there, or in the prana, or in the heart, by one who is very advanced in the yoga discipline. See, yogis, they develop this art of extracting the Lord, you see, or we should say better, not extracting, but uncovering, excavating the Lord in these his different situations. Just like fire is situated inside of wood, because the tree all day is absorbing the energy of the sun. So this fire energy is there. But one has to know how to bring it out. One can kindle, rub sticks together and see how the fire comes out. So, but one has to have knowledge how to do this. So similarly, the yogis, by their deep meditation, or deep, it is actually called samyama. Samyama. This is a very interesting piece of information that one finds in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali Muni. And Srila Prabhupada quotes Patanjali Muni elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita. So, in the high stages of yoga, there is dharana, which means concentration, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, full absorption in the absolute truth. So these three, these are the application of yoga in the mind. You see, before that stage, the yoga practice is all preliminary. It's actually called karma because it deals, Krishna mentions this in the 6th chapter, text 3. He says, for beginners in yoga there is karma because they have to gain control over the body. So this beginning form of yoga is called Hatha Yoga. And you see all over the West, there are Hatha Yoga schools, Hatha Yoga teachers. And I meet so many people, when they hear the word yoga, they think Hatha Yoga. This is what yoga means. It means Hatha Yoga. But Hatha Yoga is just neophyte yoga. It's just beginning yoga. It means yam niyam, following rules and regulations, asan, sitting down, pranayam, controlling the breath, and pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. So mostly these Western Hatha yogis, they don't even practice the yam niyam, the rules and regulations of Hatha yoga. which is the first step, step number one. That they don't even do. If they were informed what these rules and regulations were, they would be shocked. Well, I can't do that. Yes. So, so why are you trying to? What are you taking these Hatha Yoga lessons for then? So anyway, the whole point of this preliminary practice is to gain control over the senses, so that one can come to the point of fixing the mind without disturbance. Because as we all know in our practical life, it's our senses that distract the mind. Even if one is not trying to meditate, if one is just trying to fix his mind on anything, read a book, you see, or hear someone say something, then the senses throw up all kinds of distractions, you know. You are trying to concentrate, hear something, and then you feel an itch in your back, and you have to scratch, or you suddenly have to sneeze. What did you say? You know? So there are so many distractions. So a yogi has to completely conquer all of this. So this is the purpose of Hatha Yoga. And then he can move up to the higher platform, which is commonly known as Raj Yoga. And this is the mental discipline. So concentration, meditation, and total absorption. So these three, dharana, jnana, samadhi, taken together, Patanjali Muni calls that samyama. So when one comes to this samyama stage, when his mind is fully absorbed in concentration, meditation, and total absorption, then he is tapping into what is called the chitti shakti, the power of pure consciousness. The power of pure consciousness. This means that his mind is becoming, as Krishna mentions in so many places in Bhagavad Gita, the mind is becoming situated in the real state of consciousness, the self, the spiritual consciousness, which is emanating from the heart. Now this spiritual consciousness, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Lord Chaitanya compares it to cleansing the mind of all the dust. So it gives a clear reflection of the self. Just like when you look in a clear mirror, you see your face very crystal clearly. So similarly, when the mind becomes pure, then it reflects the pure consciousness of the soul. One can actually see the soul as he is, sitting in the heart. And if one develops that chitti shakti, that power of pure consciousness, to the fullest extent, then one can begin to see the super soul. But first, you see, depending on how one applies this samyama or this chitti shakti, then one will see the evidence of superior power. The evidence of the Lord's being situated in so many places, so many ways, behind this appearance of matter. And that means that the yogi starts to realize what are called siddhis, or mystical powers. So the mystical powers, they're the trace or the evidence of the presence of the Lord. But they can also be diversions. You see, then one becomes fascinated with the powers and forgets to push on to find the Lord himself. So depending on how one applies these powers, how one applies the samyama, the concentration, the meditation, the full absorption, then one can excavate different powers. For instance, just like we observe the passage of time, it's a very common thing. We see how the year changes in seasons, from summer to fall to winter to spring again. So one who's developed this chitti shakti, this intense purified consciousness, if he simply contemplates the passage of time, he can see into the future. He can actually he gains what is called trikala gyan, knowledge of past, present, and future. So he can see into the future, he can see into the past. Or one sees one's own characteristics as a person, his habits, his tendencies, mental, intellectual tendencies, whatever, his tastes. So these are our habits, and we wonder, why are we like this? We commonly look at ourselves, and especially after we do something very foolish, and people have laughed at us, and we sometimes think and wonder, why do I do such stupid things? What makes me do these silly things? But one who has developed this Chitti Shakti, when he contemplates like this, he can see his past lifetimes, because it is his past lives, his activities in previous lifetimes, which make him what he is today, or make us what we are today. You see, we have big ears or big nose or whatever, because of past karma. We can speak very nicely or can't speak at all, or are good musicians, or can't even carry a tune. You see, whenever we sing out of tune. Sometimes we hear this in the kirtan also. When we chant Hare Krishna, there's sometimes one devotee, everyone else is chanting Hare Krishna, and he's going Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He can't. So why is this? It's all because of past lifetimes activities. So a yogi can see that. So in this way he can uncover many, many mysteries about life. For instance, another thing, this universe is very mysterious. It is mysterious, of course, for the materialistic scientists who gaze out in their telescopes, send up spaceships to study. They still don't understand the form of this universe, how extensive it is. And when we read the 5th canto description of the universe, we also become puzzled. How to understand what this means, this description. But the sun is the eye of the universal form, and is also compared to the shining eye of the universe. So the sun's rays permeate the whole universe. So if one with this Chitti Shakti simply meditates on the sun, then he can see the universe from the sun's point of vision, because the sun is the chakshu, the eye, the universal eye, cosmic eye. So there are many ways in which one can apply this power of purified consciousness. But Patanjali Muni, he explains what is the proper thing to do. Out of so many options, what one should actually do, he should actually contemplate his own self-interest. So if one contemplates one's self-interest, then Patanjali Muni, he explains that one will discover that his self-interest is actually in someone else's hands. In other words, what we commonly think of self-interest, we think of it selfishly. We will realize, if we develop such yogic visionary power, that our self-interest actually depends on another self, and that is the super self, the Purusha. So we are the tiny individual soul, and the Supreme Soul is situated right next to us in the heart. And actually, he has our best self-interest in his mind. So this is how the yogi realizes the form of Super Soul, by contemplating his own self-interest. And this is very interesting, because in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj, in preaching to his schoolmates, he makes the same point. A sort of very profound philosophical understanding, that he's telling his schoolmates, because they're demons, they're sons of demons. And demons are, of course, asuras are very selfish. So he's telling them, yes, you want to work for your self-interest, very good, but you should understand what that self-interest is. Your self-interest actually lies in pleasing the Supreme Self. So you should work, you should serve the Supreme Lord. He is the self of all beings. So you want to be selfish? Then be supremely selfish. Serve the Lord in the heart. And then one actually becomes blissful. One actually becomes transcendently happy and liberated. Because one gives up this foolish struggle for independence and for struggle against the material nature which we cannot win, and simply surrenders himself to the internal guidance of Krishna. So, then when one comes to this standard, then he actually sees how all these mystical powers are actually the powers of the Super Soul himself, who is all-pervading, situated everywhere. He's situated in the hearts of all beings. He's situated within every atom. So as Srila Prabhupada explained, we see in all beings mystical powers. And we may just take them for granted, but it's a fact. You look at a tree. So, well, the tree itself is displaying so much fantastic mystic power. Because a tree eats through its feet, through its roots. And it derives sustenance from the soil, and also derives sustenance from the sun. So actually, the trees are very great yogis. Actually, many of these trees, they were in their past life yogis, impersonal yogis, impersonalist yogis. They may, like Hiranyakashipu, just stand outside day and night, stand up straight, meditating on some impersonal concept, and they stand very still and they control their breathing, and their bodies actually sometimes they stand with their hands out like this, or like Hiranyakashipu with hands up, and their bodies after many years they become stiff just like wood. The limbs can't even be moved anymore. So such persons may become trees in the next life. They've cultivated this art in the human life of how to, actually they draw their sustenance not from food. They stop eating and they get their sustenance from the sun, from the air. So the trees, they're doing this. This is evidence of mystic power. And then in the trees there are birds, and birds fly. This is also a mystic power. So we look all around us, and we see in the various living entities powers, and then we see also in the natural, in the nature, the formations of the material energy. We see so much evidence of power. And of course people speculate about this and they become fascinated and wonder and bewildered. Where is all this power coming from? But the self-realized yogi who contemplates his own self-interest and finally realizes that that is Krishna in the heart, then he sees how Krishna is supplying all of this wonderful power to everyone, all throughout the universe. So it becomes very clear to one with transcendental vision. Now in Krishna consciousness process, we don't practice that kind of yoga, the mystic yoga system. But the bhakti yoga system is symmetrically related. All yogas, they have the same symmetry. Just like in bhakti yoga we have, just like in mystic yoga, there's beginning and advanced stage. So in Bhakti Yoga we have Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, and then finally Prema Bhakti. So these are different stages of bhakti, and as one advances in the bhakti process, then one is blessed more and more with this purified vision of Krishna consciousness. And one gradually comes to the stage of seeing Krishna everywhere. This is, Krishna explains to Arjuna in the 4th chapter, this is the stage of full Krishna consciousness. When you have attained Yajgyatva na punar moham evam yashashi pandava. Yena bhutani asheshani jakshashi atmani atomai. When you have attained fully this transcendental knowledge, then you will know that all beings are situated within me and are mine. So wherever one turns one's eyes, one sees Krishna. Srila Prabhupada said this is the vision of the pure devotee. So then that is made available in a easier discipline, which even people from the Western world can follow through this Bhakti Yoga process, Krishna consciousness. So it's 8:20. I'd like to stop here. Are there any questions? Yes.
When one follows the Bhakti process, is there any risk of becoming similarly deluded by powers like the others?
The devotee is protected by Krishna because the devotee becomes dear to Krishna. Actually, we become dear to Krishna by, as I was explaining this morning, by becoming dear to Krishna's devotees. We enter the association of Vaishnavas and we get their mercy, and by their mercy we become dear to Krishna. So Krishna protects his devotee. Certainly there are all kinds of allurements from the material nature which are presented also to the devotee. Gross allurements, but also the subtle, mystical allurements may be there. But devotee is protected. Now, sometimes it is seen a non-devotee takes up the bhakti process. By non-devotee I mean someone who is actually unsurrendered in the core of his heart. So he takes up the bhakti process with some ulterior motive. And he gains something from it, gains some power, ability. We see this even in the Krishna consciousness movement. Some people join, they were completely uncoordinated persons. Had completely just spaced out in every way. But by entering the discipline of the sadhana bhakti program, then they became clean in their lives. They developed some abilities to speak, influence people, convince people, perhaps to give a donation and take some product, take a book or take some other thing. And then once they've mastered this, then they think, oh, why don't I do this for myself? And then they go away and set up some business or something. So this we have seen. This is one example. Others, they go a little farther. They develop powers to influence people, to follow them as a spiritual teacher. And once they get that, then they go away. And they try to start their own movement and their own philosophy, some kind of altered version of Krishna consciousness. So this we have seen. But such persons, they cannot be considered to be real Vaishnavas. They're rather infiltrators spies in the house of bhakti. And as soon as they get what they want, as soon as they've gone as far as they want to go, then you see their real nature. Then it manifests. But a genuine devotee, he's protected by Krishna from all these things. Mm-hmm.
What is the relation between the Maha Mantra and Bhakti Yoga?
Well, within the Bhakti Yoga process, there's the subdivision of Mantra Yoga. So, the Mantra Yoga system is used in Bhakti to actually develop the state of mind which is equivalent, symmetrically equivalent to Samadhi in the mystic yoga system. Samadhi means when the mind becomes totally merged into the absolute truth. So they do that simply by meditation, by mental control. But that, although that was effective previously, now except for a few rare souls, it is very, very difficult. So there's the Mantra Yoga process, controlling the mind with the help of spiritual sound vibration. So then there are many, many mantras. But the Hare Krishna mantra is called the Maha Mantra, the great mantra for deliverance of the mind from illusion. And it's called the Maha Mantra because it is so powerful. And the evidence of its power is broadly visible today, that this mantra has spread all over the world. And people of all nations, all cultural backgrounds are chanting this mantra and getting the same result. They're becoming sense and mind controlled. They're living pure life of according to the discipline of the yoga system. They're advancing in God consciousness. So all of this is clear evidence that this is the great mantra. Also, another well-known mantra is Om, Omkar. So many people chant that mantra too, but we don't see the same transformation in the chanters of Om as we do in the chanters of the Hare Krishna mantra.
Does it automatically lead to Bhakti?
Yes, because it is the translation of the Hare Krishna mantra is, O my Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your blissful service. So it is actually a prayer for bhakti. Bhakti means devotional, bhakti yoga means devotional service. So you can translate it in that way, that it is a prayer to Krishna, that I please be engaged in devotional service. So it is part and parcel of the bhakti process. Mm-hmm.
If such a person has developed this chit shakti, would meditate on the Hare Krishna mantra, would he also get such a realization of Krishna?
Yes, because the chitti shakti simply means consciousness devoid of material contamination. So Krishna himself describes this in that verse, Brahma bhuta prasanatma na soshati na kangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. He said, when one comes to this Brahma bhuta platform, fully realizing I'm not the body, then his consciousness becomes free of hankering lamentation. He sees all living entities as spirit souls. And mad bhaktim labate param. For him, the engagement in bhakti becomes very simple, very easy. It's very effective for him to engage in bhakti because he's on the purified platform. He has no obstructions in his way. So also the same point is being made in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in that famous Atmarama verse. Same thing. When one is on the Atmarama platform, having blissfully realized the spiritual nature of the self, then he becomes immediately attracted when he hears the glories of the Lord. And can immediately ascend to the platform of personal realization of Godhead.
So like if the devotee hears from this like background and then has difficulties in concentrating and chanting, will it be helpful with this mechanical process to subdue the mind and the senses, so one could better concentrate on the chanting?
Yeah, I mean, if this devotee is actually accomplished in yoga, I mean, if it
no yogic background, it wouldn't be helpful.
better he just stick to the bhakti yoga process. Of course, it should be mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, he did not mind his disciples taking up some yoga discipline. And there's one tape of morning walk in Mayapur, and as they were walking along, Srila Prabhupada saw underneath a tree one devotee was sitting in some yoga asana, and he was chanting his japa, looking very, very austere. And you hear Prabhupada, he asks the devotees, who is that saintly person under the tree? So, we accept what is favorable for the development of Krishna consciousness. So if it is favorable, then it can be used. Some persons come to Krishna consciousness with a considerable background in that. So if they've actually attained some power of control over mind and senses, they may use it. There's one devotee actually from the Gaudiya Math, an elderly gentleman who visited New York Temple, ISKCON Temple. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj became a little friendly with him. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj noticed that every morning after the Mangal Arati, this devotee would sit down and chant his Gayatri. He would take the Brahman thread and chant, but it would take 40 minutes for him to chant his Gayatri. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj was curious, why does it take you so long? And he explained that I meditate on these mantras of the Gayatri mantra. I meditate on each syllable very, very carefully. Because I used to be a yogi. I formerly practiced yoga. And to satisfy my mind, I have to do this. So actually Tamal Krishna Maharaj said he was quite impressed with this. Because the Gayatri mantra, when one studies it, it is explained, Kam Gayatri and the Gopal Gayatri, it consists of, 7 mantras to Guru, to Gauranga, and to Krishna. And these are actually very esoteric mantras, which, like the Kam Gayatri mantra, if one meditates on this perfectly, then this is mantra-upasana. One can actually realize Krishna's Leela through this mantra. The same thing is there in the Hare Krishna mantra also. The same truth is about that too. If we chant and hear the Hare Krishna mantra perfectly, we also realize Krishna's pastimes. But, sometimes devotees in chanting their Gayatri, they're not so attentive, rush through it, or they're pacing back and forth as they chant, or things like that. But actually, we should concentrate carefully. So this is an example. I just give this an example. Someone with a yoga background using that ability to fix the mind on his Gayatri. Maybe that's not an example. I don't want to sound like I'm proposing this, that others now try to chant in this way and thus take 40 minutes. Not saying that, I'm just mentioning it. Yes.
So the Hare Krishna mantra is supposed to be the great mantra of deliverance, so but I heard that this Sri Krishna Chaitanya is more powerful, so how do you understand this?
Yeah, the Sri Krishna, the Panchatattva mantra, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda, is the mantra we chant to remove offenses. It is, Prabhupada said, is 1,000 times more powerful than the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, but that doesn't mean, I remember when one devotee heard this, he said, then what are we chanting Hare Krishna for? We should just chant the Panchatattva Mahamantra. No, it was Lord Chaitanya's order to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But we chant the Panchatattva mantra because the Hare Krishna Mahamantra should not be offended. There are these 10 offenses, so we should avoid them. So by chanting Panchatattva Mahamantra, it is very, very purifying and removes very effectively this tendency to offend the Mahamantra. So this is why we chant it. Mm-hmm.
When did Patanjali Muni live?
Patanjali Muni, well, he's a very ancient sage. I'm not quite sure if it is known when he lived.
Was it before Krishna or after?
It's possible. I don't know. I've never seen any authorized date on him.
But his texts, these texts, they're considered Vedic?
He's accepted as the great authority on the mystic yoga system, and his yoga sutras are derived from the Vedas. But it's not Vedanta. You see, it's not the conclusion that's made by Vyasadeva, who is the compiler of the Vedas. So therefore, it's considered a separate school from the Vedantic line. But it is on the other side, it is a very nice, clear explanation of the yoga system.
It corresponds to the Ashtanga yoga system?
Yeah, that is the Ashtanga yoga system. Eightfold yoga. Mm-hmm.
I saw in the Mahabharata where 5 Pandavas going many days they hadn't drinking, and so Yudhishthira sent his brothers to this lake to get some water, and they died all because they didn't want to answer this question from Dharma. When Yudhishthira came here, there were many questions. One of the questions were about, I don't know exactly know, but it's about a Brahmana, how to be a Brahmana. And then Dharma said, is it by birth from a Brahmana family, or by studying, or being a very learning man, something like this, or behavior. And then Yudhishthira answered, behavior. If you don't make a better behavior, you will lose. And even if you are a good learning man or a Brahmin or all that, if you make bad behavior, you're nothing. So my question is, how can you get a good behavior, even if you know this scripture is very good? Okay, you can maybe say chanting, but
good behavior comes from good association. You have to associate with others who behave good. And by the association, you see, it's a very simple point. If you develop friendship with devotees of the Lord who have good behavior, and you value that friendship, it goes deep in your heart, you don't want to disturb this friendship, then naturally you will behave properly in their company. Because if you behave improperly, then it's a big problem. Huh? That's everyone's experience everywhere. If you have dear friends or family members and you want to maintain good relationships, then you follow their mode of behavior. You fit in with them. Now, unfortunately, in this world, so many people are bad behaved. So when you make tight friendships with them, then you also become, you do what they do. And this way everybody goes to hell together. So in Krishna consciousness, the devotees, they practice good behavior, and one entering that society will also pick up the good behavior. So it's actually very simple. That's why association with devotees it's actually the main thing. As I was explaining this morning, Adau Shraddha, first there is faith. And what should the faith lead to? Sadhu Sangha, association with devotees. That's how it all begins. It's a basic platform. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.